Good to see everybody tonight. This is it, guys. Our 7th class. Isn't that crazy how time flies? Time flies when you're having fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We got one more class left, and so this is going to be an exciting time. But while you're checking in, we're glad you're here. Here's the second to the last chat night question. What was your worst injury or pain? What was your worst injury or pain? Did you have an accident? Did you have a sickness, a surgery? What was your worst injury or pain ever? I'm writing mine right now.
Ouch.
What do we got so far? Neck surgery. Oh, wow. Child. If you've had a child, you take the cake. Broken little toe. Wow.
I think that always wins, right?
Suitcase fell off a van and shattered it. Man. Here's mine for fun. And it stuck. And I had to go to the doctor. Had to the paramedics wouldn't take it out because it was in too deep. And so I had to go to the hospital. Of course, it's dangling, and I'm and they put me in an ambulance, and the doctor x-rayed it to see how far it went. And
So
he
I
showed
have
me,
to know, was it an accident or was it on purpose?
I was a dumb kid, and my brother and I were playing a game of how close can you get the dart next to the person without hitting them. And by the way, he lost.
I think you lost.
Can you believe what a stupid idiot I was to do that? It was crazy. Okay, so if you're just joining us, we're in the chat having some fun, and we're revealing the worst injury that we've ever had or the worst pain that we've ever gone through. The worst injury you've ever had or the worst pain you've ever gone through. Worst injury or skateboarding, broke every bone in my foot. Oh, wow. Oh, toenail ripped off. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, that's the worst. Root canal, right? Poor root canal, man. That was the worst pain I've ever had. I had 2 root canals at once. Two tooths. Is that how you say? Abscess. Yeah, that's terrible. My brother was in a biking accident on the street, and he thrashed his whole foot, and he went to the doctor, and half his toenail was gone. And he said, listen, I have to remove the other half because it won't grow right. And he said, are you serious? He's all, it's going to hurt like crazy, but if I give you a shot, it's going to hurt even more. And so they like held him down, put something in his mouth, and they ripped off his toenail. Oh, got hit by what? Oh my gosh. That is crazy. Hit by an SUV while walking. Oh man.
Still alive.
That is. I gotta tell you guys a story, man. I was doing this Bible study. I was pastoring a church in Georgia, and I was hosting a study of all seekers. So these are people who are undecided. They're not church folks. They're just, and I have a room of 12 in my living room where we're just talking about, how they perceive God and faith. And I said, yeah. So I'm asking each person, hey, what kind of got you interested in faith? And this woman goes, man, I'm just a real bad person. I'm like, well, how bad? She says, well, I got in a bunch of trouble because I tried to hurt my husband. I said, like, how? How'd you try to hurt your husband? So I tried to run over him when I was coming home from work. And I'm like physically run over him? She's like, yeah, I ran over him. And then I backed up because he got up. That's how I started the study that night. I'm like, okay, you need God. Oh, that was great. All right, we're having some fun. 7:05. All right, guys. Welcome back to the second to last 201 class, Discovering My Spiritual Maturity. And we have one more class left. This is a class, of course, about 4 spiritual habits, or 4 spiritual disciplines, or 4 spiritual practices that really cause us to thrive and grow spiritually with God in our relationship with Him. And so remember the first one, we spent 2 weeks talking about Bible study, right? And then next week we spent 2 weeks talking about prayer. Bible study is God talking to us. Prayer is us talking to God, right? And then last week we started a 2-part series about enjoying the family of God. What spiritual community with each other looks like. And I said we were going to unpack 6 insights as to why spiritual community is so important. And one of the questions that I really wanted to challenge ourselves to always be asking is how does my connections with others impact the person I want to become? How do those relationships begin to impact the person I want to become? And so we begin to break down 6 insights into community. We talked about this idea of belonging, how it's just not wanting to belong to something bigger than you, but experiencing that kind of safe acceptance. And then we talked about encouragement, that we don't have to be a walking spiritual Hallmark card and have all the right words. We just need to be there for people. And then lastly, we talked about accountability, and how people seem to think that grace and truth are polar opposites. And the Bible says they're not polar opposites. In fact, you can't have one without the other. And we need to, and that's what accountability is. It's a combination of grace and truth, because we need truth tellers in our life, and we're not a very good judge of ourselves. And so when we bring other people into our life, they check us on our blind spots, and that's how we grow. And so tonight we're going to talk about the last 3 and conclude our little session on community. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys and go to the slide deck. All right. So number 4, picking up from where we left off last week, there is power when people pray together. That's one of the great insights into this idea of community. Now, I'm not going to spend any time talking about this number 4, as powerful as it is, because we just got through 2 weeks of prayer. But let me just say this: just one thing about prayer. Coming together does for prayer what a magnifying glass does for sunlight. See if you can get a visual of that. Coming together as Christians in community for prayer does for prayer what a magnifying glass does for sunlight. There's just an intensity and a concentrated focus when people come together in community, more than one, to pray. And it's not that your prayer is heard louder or more intently by God, but Scripture seems to suggest that there is an intensity behind it, and it's powerful. And so that's all I'm going to say about it right now, because we talked all about prayer. But man, when you combine what you learned through the Lord's Prayer and you partner with others, it's like putting a magnifying glass under sunlight, and how that creates heat. You guys remember, especially the guys, how they used to take a magnifying glass and basically light insects on fire, because that lens is concentrating, right? That light through that lens, that magnifying glass, and it's intensifying the heat. And that's what prayer does. It's powerful. So let me move on to the 5th one. Fellowship, this idea of coming together, right, is a witness to grow spiritually. It's a witness to grow spiritually. Here's what's behind that. You guys know that valuing people is a signature mark of a believer, right? Treating people right is a spiritual value that Christians ought to be known for. And when we don't get that right, the credibility of our faith is at stake. That's what it means. Our witness is at stake. People are watching us. In other words, they're measuring whether our faith is real by the way we treat each other. In John 17, in Jesus's kind of high priestly prayer before he's crucified, in John 17, 22 and 23, he's praying to the Father. And this is what he said. He said, I pray that they might be one, speaking of his followers. I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me. He says, I want them to be one, like you and I are one. I want them to have complete unity. And then he says this, then, see, after they're unified, then the world will know that you sent me. And so, in other words, when we treat each other right, it's a powerful witness to the credibility of our faith. It's really important. You guys remember the story of the boy who cried wolf, right? Bored kid, and goes outside to the outskirts of town, and he starts yelling wolf, wolf, wolf. Of course, he's pulling everyone's leg, and everyone in the town runs out to save the boy, only to find out that they've been had. Right? He's just playing a practical joke on everyone. And he does it again. He goes outside on the outskirts of town and yells wolf, 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 and the whole townspeople run out ready to help him and save him from this wolf. Of course, they find out they've been had again. They've been tricked. And this boy finally says, you know what, enough of that. I'm not going to do that anymore. People are upset. And then he's on the outskirts of town, and a wolf really does come and begins to attack the boy. And he begins to yell, wolf, help me, somebody help me. And you know what happens. Nobody comes, right? They've seen enough. And the moral takeaway of the story is, when there's no influence, there is no influence without integrity. That's the moral of that story. You had no influence anymore on those people when you cried for help, because there's no integrity. And you will not have any faith Christian influence on people without the integrity in the way in which we treat each other. It's so important. Now listen, there's a fair question that comes after that. How are we supposed to be unified when we're all so different as Christians? Right? That's a valid question. How are we supposed to get our act together when we're so totally different? Even the people in this class right now, I mean, we don't know really who each other is, and all the things about us and what we do and what we believe and all the differences about us. And I mean, we're all different. So how do we make this work when we're so different? And unfortunately, Christians have kind of gone about this sometimes by creating what I call artificial unity. And what I mean by artificial unity is that it's forced. It's not coming out of our love for God or our love for others. It's a manipulated, artificial, manufactured type of unity, right? Let me illustrate what I mean by that. I remember when COVID just started, right? We couldn't get, all the food was off the shelf, couldn't get toilet paper, you couldn't get all this crazy stuff, you couldn't get eggs, right? And someone put out this funny video that I was just laughing my butt off. And the guy films it with his phone camera, and he turns it on and he starts showing. He says, guys, you're not going to believe what happened to me today. I met the nicest people in my community at the market. I didn't have any food, I didn't have any of the essentials, and you know what, I walked out of the store and people just started sharing all the stuff in their cart with me. And he points the camera at all the stuff on his kitchen counter. He said, look at all this great stuff. I mean, some eggs, some bread. And then for the first time, his hand comes into the picture, and he's got a pistol in his hand as he begins to point to all the food items on the counter. And so as he's talking about all these great, loving, giving people who gave him all this food, obviously the point of it is the guy had a gun. And but see, this is what I mean by the artificial type of unity, right? And in a similar way, Christians know that we're supposed to be unified and treat each other right, but sometimes they go about it in a very manipulative way. Let me show you what a couple of those look like. Sometimes they try to get unity by conquering those who are different than them, right? That's what everything's a competition. And so as soon as they realize that you don't believe what they believe or you see things different, all they want to do is argue you to their side because somehow they think, well, then that's how we'll be unified. You just need to believe like me. And here's my arguments and to conquer you. That's artificial. And some have said, well, you know what? We can get along great by you staying in your corner and I'll go over here. And so we exclude people who are different than us. And that's how they get their unity. They demonize and shun people who are different than them or believe differently than them or see things differently. They see them as an enemy. And they see, this is how we can get along. This is how we can be good witnesses as Christians and have unity. And that's artificial. Or there's the cloning type people who, if they say, you know what, if you guys were just like me, in fact, I'll tell you right now, the world would be a greater place if everyone was just like me. And so anyone who's different than me, I want to make them like you. So we talk the same, we look the same, we raise our families the same, we treat each other the same in our marriages, and we're all just these cookie cutter Christians. And by the way, there's tons and tons of churches in America that are just like this. And you walk in the front door and they just tell you, this is what the cookie cutter Christian looks like at our church. And if you don't conform to this, then you're probably best going somewhere else. And they pressure everyone into being the same. That's artificial unity. And lastly, they just isolate from those who are different than them. In other words, they don't exclude you. They just go. They don't want to deal with you. They just hang out in their corner. They go rogue and they just do their own thing. But they'll also suggest you do your own thing too. And that's how we'll get along. And a lot of these people are the ones who have like territory ministries in the church. And this is mine, that's yours. And they have a line in the sand. You stay over there, I'll stay over here. And there's no collaboration. There's no teamwork. They just go, hey, the best way for us to get along is you do your thing, I'll do mine. Guys, none of these is a true picture of biblical unity. Biblical unity allows us to have our differences, but watch this. Where we come together, where we intersect is on the things that we have in common, right? We come together on shared beliefs and values that transcend our differences. In other words, we're not cloning each other. I'm not trying to get you to believe what I believe or see the way we still can have our differences. But the shared beliefs and values that we have in common, we're going to allow those to transcend those differences when we come under the umbrella at Calvary Community Church. When we're here, you know what? Do we all believe that Jesus is Lord? He is our God. He is worthy to be worshiped. Yes. Well, then great. We're going to worship. That doesn't mean we see everything the same. Hey, do we all believe that God speaks truth to us through the scriptures? Yes. Well, then great. We're going to have Bible study together at Calvary. We define what those pillars of faith are. Some churches call them a statement of faith. You learn this in 101. And those are the irreducible, non-negotiable pillars of our faith. And we're saying to everyone who comes to Calvary, listen, if we can come together on those, then you know what? We need to make all the other differences secondary. That is biblical faith. We come together based on our commonalities, but we allow each other to be different in the things that don't matter. I hope that really makes sense. All right. So there's power when we pray. There's fellowship. Fellowship is a witness when to grow spiritually. And here's the last one. I'm obligated to every other Christian. Now, I know that sounds like a strong word, right? I'm obligated to every other Christian. But you really have to understand why it's such an exclamation mark in the scriptures. And here's why. We have each and every believer, each and every Christian has something to contribute that you cannot withhold because it makes that big of a difference. You matter to our church. You're bringing something. God has wired you in such a way that what you bring to the table, what is something I need in my life. I heard someone once say that God has given pieces of my puzzle to other people so that I'll always be aware of my need for others. Man, that is so powerful. You have something in your life that completes me. And God has made each of us perfectly incomplete so that we will rely on each other for the things that, for those weaknesses or absences in our life that you bring to my life. In fact, I'll tell you right now, I mean, we see this kind of in an informal way. There are people in your life that when they're around you, they bring something out in you that no one else does. It's not that you're a chameleon. It's just like, when I'm with my friends from junior high and I still have them, I mean, man, we we go back and sometimes we act like kids, but they bring something out in me that none of my other friends can. And yet I'll hang around some other friends and they bring something completely out in me that my friends from junior high cannot do. My wife brings out something in me, my kids bring out something in me. I mean, we find ourselves in all these different arenas when it comes to people. My work friends bring something out in me, executive leaders bring something out in me, and that's the way God designed it. But in the Christian community at church, um, in 301, uh, you're going to take assessments to find out what God has packed in your bags. How has God wired you? What are those strengths and those gifts and those talents that you have so that you can live intentionally to make sure that you're partnering with other Christians and you're bringing that to the table. Um, I got a great story that really illustrates the power of this kind of partnership. The story takes place in 1904 at the World's Fair held in St. Louis. And it's a blazing, sticky, hot day, 95 degrees, lots of people. Everyone is just dying in the heat, right? This is 1904. There are two food vendors that had their food booths right next to each other. One of them was named Arnold Fornichu, who was an ice cream making guy, right? And then set up next to him, next to his booth, was a man named Ernest Hamway, who was a pastry chef from Damascus, Syria. Ernest was making these flat, soft pastry wafers that were really popular treats where he came from, and he would cook them kind of on a waffle iron, sprinkle them with sugar, and then roll the wafers while they were still warm, so they could be carried around and eaten on the go. But these neighboring vendors next to each other were having some problems. Arnold had a long line for ice cream, but he was serving ice cream in ceramic bowls that had to be washed every time a customer was done. This is 1904, right? We don't have paper goods at this time. And he could not wash the bowls fast enough to meet the demands of the long lines that he was attracting. And so frustrated customers were leaving. Not good for business, right? Ernest, in the booth next to him, was having problems as well. Nobody wanted a flat, warm pastry on a scorching hot day. Not good for business. And with no one at his booth, he noticed the problem that Arnold was having in the next booth next to him, being unable to wash the bowls fast enough to serve more ice cream. That's when Ernest got an idea, a crazy idea. He quickly rolled one of his warm pastries and walked over to Arnold's ice cream booth. And Ernest could not speak very good English. And so he tried to communicate to Arnold to scoop some of the ice cream on top of his folded wafer cone. It took a minute or two, but Arnold finally got it. No more bowls needed. They quickly pulled their booths together. Ernest rolled pastries into a cone shape, and Arnold put ice cream on top. And what they called the edible bowl back then is now what we know today as the ice cream cone. True story. You can Google it in 1904. Here's the takeaway about partnership. You are always one relationship away from something new or something better in your life. That's the way God designed it. In fact, I'll raise that to another level. You are always one relationship away from God doing something new or better in your life. In fact, listen, here's one way you can apply this right now. You should have three types of intentional relationships in your life. You should always be a student. Find someone who walks ahead of you, right? So that you're learning from them, because someone has something that you need to know that they can bring to the table that you don't have. So you need to kind of be the Timothy, right? Who needs a Paul. You also need just to be a friend, someone that walks beside you. It's David and Jonathan, right? And by the way, Jonathan was Saul's son. Saul was the first king of Israel, and his son was Jonathan. He was set to be king next after his dad. We call him a prince. But David had God's call in his life, and God wanted David to be the next king. Could you imagine that? He was dethroning Jonathan from his rightful position as heir to the throne. But Jonathan befriended him. Can you believe that? And he knew that God had called David to be the next king. And these guys, Jonathan brilliantly created a safe place in his life for someone like David. Man, we need people like that, right? No one knew those type of people you don't have to impress, right? They can go looking through your fridge. They can walk in your house. They're just those type of friends. And lastly, you need to be a coach. You need to find someone who walks behind you, right? This is the story of Jethro coming into Moses' life. And Jethro coached Moses as to how to delegate leadership. He came into Moses' life, saw Moses exhausted from thinking that he was the only guy that had a brain. He was the only guy that actually was smart. And Jethro, his father-in-law, said, listen, there are other smart people, other good leaders that could do some of this. Delegate it. And he coached Moses. But Moses was someone who walked behind him. Guys, we can be intentional in our relationships because every single one of us brings something to the table, which means that we're obligated to be there for each other. Because I need you and you need someone else. So listen, here's where all this is going. This is a practical way that you can apply this to your life. Every member needs to be a part of a small group of some kind, right? Some type of gathering with other believers on a regular basis. For some of you, it's going to be a service group. Maybe you get together as a group of volunteers and you serve in the Sunday school ministry or the kids ministries or the nursery or the special needs, or maybe it's you're part of the ushers team or the parking lot team, and that's a small group. Or maybe it's a men's group or a women's group, or right now you're in a learning group, right? But you always need to find yourself in some type of group that meets on a regular basis where you can share life together. And by the way, you'll hear every fall in September, Calvary opening up small groups for you to be a part of. And then you'll also see those kind of on-ramps in the spring where they begin to promote all the different types of groups in the church that you can be a part of. We at Calvary believe our church must grow small and large at the same time, right? I mean, there's 5,000 people or more that come to Calvary on a weekly basis on the weekends, and I can't get to know everyone. And so as our church gets larger, small groups allow us to get smaller. And that's an intentional choice we have to make, to find some people, whatever context you find yourself in. Maybe you're getting together with 5 guys and you bike ride on the weekends. I don't know. I know some people who are in a knitting group. They love knitting, and so that's what they do. They get together once a week, every other week, and they talk about what God's doing in their life as they knit. I mean, there's so many ways on different bases we can come together, but get together. So important. So here's what we talked about. Here are some of the things that you can apply to your small group. There's growing, there's belonging, there's worshiping, there's serving, there's sharing. And not every group is going to run on all pistons, but you're going to migrate towards one of these that are going to define your small group. And but there's all types of groups. So I hope you got those down. So let me just end by this before we go into discussion. Let me talk about some gospel rhythms. And what we mean by gospel rhythms is it's just trying to give you a way that we could prioritize relationships in the normal rhythm of our life. How can we put these type of intentional relationships in the normal rhythm of the life? Here's one idea: story forming, right? we allow our stories to be shaped by God's word, the Holy Spirit, and his people. And what we mean by this is when you create a story, what you're really doing is creating a moment. And you need to be present in those moments. If it's happening or whether you make it happen. I love to make the story happen. I love to create moments. And I hope you guys do too. It could be something very simple. Um, I was just out with my family the other day. All six of us went out and we had a game night. It was so fun. And every time we do that and we're intentional about coming together, we're creating a memory. Why? Because we're creating a story. You know, I intentionally did this in my kid's life. I have two daughters. They're older now and they're both married and they're both gone. But you know what? Ever since they were kids, my wife said, when we celebrate Valentine's, I want the girls there. And so from the time they were 5 years old, all the way till college, we always went out to dinner, all four of us, and we had a little ceremony where I was trying to create a story and create a memory, and I gave them all a very special gift. They all dressed up, I dressed up, and it was our family tradition. And my girls have every single present I've given them for the last 25 years of their life. But we gotta create these, and we can create them with others. Here's a picture of a wedding. Man, help, especially if it's someone getting married and they're special in your life. Man, be a part of that story. I can't tell you how many bride and grooms I talk to where they ask someone to be part of their wedding party, and the person goes, "Oh man, I don't know if I have the time. I don't have the money to buy, rent a tux or get a dress." And I can't tell you how many discouraged newlyweds are when they find out their friends don't want to be a part of that story. It's crazy. It should be an honor because you're helping create a memory. All right, number two. Here's a way that you can apply this in the natural rhythm of your life. Be a good listener. Listen to those stories. All the people around you, right? Listen. When you listen, you will understand before being understood. That's worth $1,000 right there. When you listen, you'll understand before being understood. I'm a Covey fan. I read a lot of Covey leadership stuff, and he tells the story of him being at a parent conference, and he was really talking about parents connecting with their teens. And this angry guy comes down and says, and looks right at him. He says, "I get what you're saying, but I don't understand my son. He doesn't listen to me." And Stephen Covey said, "Say that one more time." He said, "I don't understand my son. He doesn't listen to me." He said, "Say it one more time. I don't understand my son because he doesn't listen to me." He says, "Now I want you to say it really slow, and I want you to hear what you're saying. I don't understand my son. He doesn't listen to me." How can you possibly understand your son when you're the one doing the talking? Bam! Bam! Man, understanding is so powerful. Can I give you something that's worth $1,000? It is difficult to dislike people you understand. Man, you got a porcupine cactus person in your life, try to understand them and watch how hard it is to dislike them just by listening. Understand them. Okay, we got to move on. Number three, celebrate. Oh, I love this, right? Celebrate the abundant life God has given us with his grace, mercy, love, faithfulness. Man, find someone to put in the spotlight, right? Find someone to put in the spotlight. My daughter a while back just passed her state license test to be a social worker. She had already had her master's in it, but she needed to pass the state test. And we just lit it up, man. We had a party. We took her out to dinner and just put the spotlight on her to congratulate her and make her feel loved and to love on her because it was a moment to celebrate. And man, I hope you guys are finding, whether it's a birthday or a wedding, I don't care what it is, find reasons to celebrate and put someone in the spotlight, especially your kids. Um, oh, this is my favorite one. Everyone said amen to this one. Eating. Listen, can I give you a secret? Um, One of the greatest assets you have is your home, is your residence. I don't care how small it is. I don't care if it's an apartment, condo, mansion. I don't care what it is. When you invite people over to eat, you knock down walls faster than anything else. We get so self-conscious about the way our how big or small or what our house looks like. People don't care. Just the fact that you invited them over for a little barbecue in the backyard or just something informal. I mean, walls come down. and when you guys just eat together. And so, man, I hope whether it's inside or out, or you guys go out, um, I hope you do that. For me and my work, I have to meet with a lot of people every Friday. I try to find someone to connect with at work, and we just go out and have a simple lunch because I just know that when you eat together, it's a powerful connection. Let me give you two more. Blessing, right? We seek to bless people through praying, listening, encouraging, giving, and supporting. What I mean by this is it sounds ceremonial, but when we talk about blessing others, what we're talking about is bringing value to them, right? Who can you do the most good for this week? Stop trying to be the hero and be the helper, right? Stop trying to create a platform for yourself. Bring value to others, and the platform will come to you. If you're a young leader looking to make your mark, maybe at work, and you go, you know what, imagine I want to go up the ladder. I need to find a platform for myself. Listen, start bringing value to others, and the platform is going to come to you. Here's the last one. Um, Recreate. It's where we get the word recreation, right? Enjoy yourself. I love this. I love movies. My wife and I on date night, we see a movie once a week on Saturday. So I'm a big time movie person. But you know what I believe in? I believe in fun. I, I believe in going out and have a good time with people. Listen, you don't have to, you know, be baptized in lemon juice to be spiritual or to be godly. I mean, just think about it for a second. For some reason, Christians have this adverse reaction to pleasure, and I don't know why. Because God created it. Think about just your five senses, right? He didn't have to give you those five senses. You could have been a sustainable human being and not had the ability to taste. I mean, you could have just pounded down food and for your own nourishment to survive, but it didn't have to taste like fettuccine alfredo. It didn't have to taste like a double double. But he's given us these incredible taste abilities so that we can enjoy our food and have it be pleasant. I'm not saying overdo it. I'm not saying get candy, ice cream, and soda. I'm saying that, but all I'm saying is um, God created us with the ability to taste. Why? So we can enjoy our the ability to smell, you know. Um, Early on, I raised two girls, so my girls and my wife always said, listen, you're going to smell like this great Abercrombie and Fitch cologne that we always smell when we go in the store. And so for the last 15 years, that's what I wear. And they love the smell. And every time they're on, Dad, I can smell you. I can smell you. Think about this. I mean, God did not have to make a red rose smell. He didn't have to, but he did because he wants you to enjoy it, right? I mean, he gave you this ability to see so that when you see a sunset over the ocean, go to Neptune's Net and sit on the little bench right across the highway there and just look out and watch some of the sail surfing and the beach and the waves. And man, do you start taking in life because God gave you the ability to see beauty in something, right? Or think about your ability to touch. Listen, he didn't have to make sex enjoyable. You could have procreated and made little mini me's without it being enjoyable. It could have just been a mechanical act. But there are things in your body, both in men and women, whose sole purpose it is to give you pleasure. That's it. And if you doubt me, go read the Songs of Solomon. They're not thinking about kids. Those guys are lost in passionate, feel good sex, and they're writing about it in a very poetical way because it's enjoyable, it's pleasure. And then think about lastly, sound, classic rock. I was just cranking on my Pandora, my favorite 80s station because I'm a product of 80s and I think the 80s produced some of the best music. And so I cranked one morning. I was working out and I just cranked the Bangles all all morning long, and I was killing it. I loved it. I love music. Some of you guys love classic rock, or I love classic rock. I love country. My wife and I last year before COVID went and saw Yo-Yo Ma, I mean, the guy was in front of 10,000 people with a cello. And I sat and listened to one guy play a cello for an hour and a half. It was awesome. Yo-Yo Ma is one of the best cello musicians in the world. but I enjoyed it because God gave me the ability to listen and take all of that life in. Listen, you don't have to pretend you've been baptized in lemon juice to be a godly person. God gave you all this to enjoy, and that's one of the ways that you bring other people into your life through all of these ways. Okay, I'm done talking. Went too long, but that was fun. Um, Man, this is where we live. Anyway, I'm gonna send you to your groups, and I'll see you back in about 20, 25 minutes.